I really appreciate you joining me today, and this story comes from Kingstanding here in Birmingham. When I arrived at the scene of the suspected gas explosion on Dulwich Road today, it was a very sombre mood. Locals were actually taking flowers to the cordon and passing them to police to be able to place outside the home where a woman has lost her life. It has just been revealed today, and a man is critically ill in hospital suffering horrendous injuries after the home was destroyed. Locals have told me from the time that I've spent there that the roof was actually blown off the house, and this is opposite a school and also a leisure centre. There was also reports that the blast was felt by up to 3 miles away. This is how the shockwaves were so strong, and a tree was snapped outside from when the blast power initially impacted, and this resulted in the tree falling onto a car, and the car, a Mercedes, a white Mercedes, which you can see in the footage, being flipped over onto its roof. And locals told me the fire service then turned it back over. So I'm going to explain what I've been told from locals and what I've recorded from the scene. And then we're going to look at the police statement, the ambulance service statement, and also the fire service statement. One thing that I do need to point out as well is that locals have said that there were private properties. These were not council properties. These were private owned landlords. 4 properties in a row that were owned, I believe, as it's been claimed, by a private landlord. There was a large police presence and all of the emergency services were still there a day later, but it was said by locals that the fire engines didn't turn up for up to half an hour afterwards. So as of yet, I haven't seen a statement explaining why there was a delay, but one could assume maybe it was to check that the gas had been turned off, because the last thing they'd want to do is hurt more people. An amazing thing that actually came from this story is that locals went into the home on their own, off their own back, and rescued a man from the kitchen. He was apparently wedged between a fridge, and if you see the state of the property, there was absolutely nothing left, so he would have been discovered in the rubble, literally. Sky News has reported that the man suffered significant injuries and is in a life-threatening condition, and I was told that he had very bad burns as well. The mid-terraced house was destroyed and several others were significantly damaged. One man told PA News Agency that everyone was watching the fire and then people started to go in. About a dozen people went in. The guy was in the back of the house and we could hear him screaming. He was trapped against the fridge in the kitchen. The dust from the loft installation was also burning around us, and they managed to get him out, he said, and pulled him to the local leisure centre. He was screaming that there was a woman in the house as he was being taken out, and this has today been confirmed as well. And I also know local people in the area who have also clarified that the woman has passed away. And from the aerial shots, you can see the devastation that this has actually caused and the real reality that is hitting home for a lot of people. And being at the scene as well, it definitely made it real, and also how quick this can happen. It was reported that somebody called Reese95 wrote on Twitter that the devastating explosion happened in Kingstanding, and his cousin was one of the people who saved his life, and he's very proud of him. 4 other men suffered minor injuries and were assessed by ambulance crews for minor conditions, but have since been discharged. Emergency services said evacuations were taking place and people had been urged to avoid the local area. This is the Dulwich Road in the Kingstanding area, and they said the cause of the fire has not yet been confirmed. West Midlands Fire Service Commander Steve Ball said, at around 8:30 p.m, we were called to the scene of a gas explosion. On arrival, it was a challenging scene where one house was completely destroyed and 3 neighbouring properties were very badly damaged. Some people have even said to me they believe they may even have to knock them down due to structural damage. Cadent Gas and National Grid were attending the scene as well, and 6 fire crews, 3 ambulances, 5 paramedics and a national interagency liaison officer were also present at the scene. The fire service didn't say when they arrived at the scene. Usually they will say specifically when they arrived. And this may be due to the fact that they want to explain why they were slightly delayed for whatever reason comes out later. In some other coverage from this story as well, a man who lived next door to the house that exploded said that him going to the toilet was the only reason that he survived. A man called Lami Charlery spoke to the Daily Mirror newspaper and said that he'd been playing on his computer in the living room, but went to the bathroom when the massive explosion brought his lounge kitchen crashing down, right on the spot where he'd been sitting. Mr. Charlery said the ceiling came down and the glass smashed, and I wouldn't have been alive if I was there. He then talks about how 10 to 15 people, including himself, went to help the victim next door. The neighbour is a dad of 2, and he said he was thankful for the local community who helped him and found him a place to sleep for the night as well. And the Kingstanding Inn put up 4 families for the evening because they'd had to be evacuated from the local area. He went on to say that everyone has been so kind and they're really grateful for all the support from the neighbours as well. Blankets of smoke covered the street, and there was a pile of rubble where the house had been, and massive flames were burning for a substantial amount of time after the initial incident. One person said in this interview that they formed a chain and they were removing rubble bit by bit, and a few of the young lads got a wooden beam, and a woman from a different property who was a sports physio pulled the man out. They then put him on a mattress that had been blown out of the house until emergency services arrived. So this is a devastating story to come from Birmingham, but at the same time it also shows the real bravery of locals as well, to risk sacrificing themselves, because at that point the gas wouldn't have been turned off and there could easily have been another explosion. But then people couldn't stand by and watch this man scream for help and not do anything. So a big respect to everybody in Kingstanding. So as I said, this is a breaking news story, and I'm definitely going to follow this story. Maybe there could be an investigation into the landlord, and when they determine what actually happened and if there is anybody responsible for this horrendous incident. So I really appreciate it if you paid your respects in the comments, and I'll definitely update on the website when we get an identification of the victims as well. And thank you to everybody for your support, and I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Thank you.
There's some of the nest outside the front,
I know.
but they'll move them to opposite the house. Those will be swept up.
Yeah, that's
Right,
fine.
so don't think where the eyes permanent.
I'm not fussed as well because I've
No, thank you.
Caulfield, they heard it.
You're joking.
Erdington Pub Place.
got all up there, they heard it. That's that loud.
I'm surprised my picture started on the bleeding wall, if it was honestly.
Well, these porches like a flimsy, you know what I mean?
But you're on this side, so you would have felt it more, wouldn't you?
Good shape, just the way it
I was going to come down yesterday to check if everyone was alright.
Because it was like 8:30 or something, wasn't it?
Half 8, 8:30.
Crazy, man.
It's all okay there. No, one meeting going on.
No, it's not going to be alright, is it?
I think I have a point.
Now, one guy's in hospital, but he's meant to be so burst, well, they're saying he's going to die.
What about the owner?
It's a bird, she died instantly.
She died.
The house, mate, the house is gone, bro. There's no house.
You can
No
see
house.
literally
No
the
house.
flat.
No house. He was found in the rubble, like some film. In the rubble, underneath a fridge. Isn't it? The neighbours took him out, and he's just all burned, bro. That's what he's done to the tree, though. You know what I mean?
I think else happened.